where we are, if we need to make progress, all of us must agree that this system has to all go down. We must bring down the entire political system and start rebuilding our politics and our governance afresh. And what the young people, by raising the economic question, are doing is they are now doing what we call an economic revolution. If you look at all the so-called leading political leaders in Kenya today, and you go back 30 years, all of them held a position somewhere in the last 30 years, either as a member of parliament, a senator, a governor, a CS. It's the same people. They've sat in parliament, they've sat in the cabinets that have approved these illegal borrowings, that are superintendent over the economic oppression and slavery of the people of Kenya. For those who don't know me, I'm Willis Otieno. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and I've been part of the conversation about changing this country to be a better country for all Kenyans. It is important that I start by saying that as we go through this revolution, we need to understand what is going on. If you look at the history of Kenya from 1992, in between elections, there has always been what we call a midterm contest. After 92 elections, the midterm contest was about amending the constitution, which the opposition was trying to fashion as the issue to address Moyon. Between 1997 and 2002 was a political reconfiguration, with Raila joining KANU with a view to either take over power within KANU or to dismantle that KANU. 2002 to 2007, we had the referendum, which was about amending the constitution and bringing a new constitution. The contest of the referendum, which gave birth to ODM and PNU. Between 2007 to 2008 was now the actual referendum that brought us our new constitution as the midterm contest. Then 2013 to 2017, we had the attempted Okoa Kenya constitutional amendment again, and the IBC must go. Then between 2017, 2022, we had the ill-fated BBI attempt. You will note one common denominator in all these midterm contests. It's always the political class fashioning the midterm contest. Now, in the present circumstances, the political class attempted to fashion the midterm contest with Raila Odinga's mandamanos of 2023, but at some point they quickly closed ranks and came up with their broad-based, the dialogue process that came up with that, the report that was meant to, in a way, midwife us into a new political contest. But the Kenyan people last year took away that conversation from the political class, and they pushed forward the midterm contest to be about the economy. The finance bill happened just to be but a trigger of that midterm contest. And so far, in my view, the people have won, and the political class is attempting a comeback. That is why they are all regrouping. For you to understand this, we must also appreciate that what the people have brought forward is a new contestation. Politicians are not used to this kind of issue-based politics. But when Kenyans come out in their numbers, when Kenyans caucus, irrespective of their political leaders, their tribal leaders, their political parties, to address an issue that affects every Kenyan wherever he is, be he in Kenya or is in the diaspora, because they still have a presence in Kenya. That has now forced the politicians to now either attend to the issue of the economy that we've raised, or they will try a comeback that undermines that contest that we are proposing. The attempt now to form the broad-based government, to bring in subsequently Uhuru Kenyatta into the mix, is a political comeback that does not want what the people has put as a contest to continue. I'll advise this. Note that William Ruto is gone. He has lost the midterm contest that the people proposed. He has lost the question of the economy, and all that the people are going to do now is just to amplify and to highlight the failures of the regime. There's nothing new that is going to do to change the mindset. of Kenyans. And there's nothing that is going to do. There is no program is going to implement that will change our economic trajectory. And I say this with utmost respect to those who think he can. If you look at the status of our books, I will tell you it's almost impossible. Because if out of every 100 Kenya shillings Kenya government collects in terms of tax, they are spending 70 shillings to pay debt. They are left with 30 shillings. Of these 30 shillings, they did an average 35 shillings to pay salaries. So it means they are negative 5. Of the amount they collect, they need 30 shillings to pay for government operations. That is negative 35. They need 15 shillings to take to counties. That is negative 45, negative 50. And that is even before you touch on any development. So essentially, the government is broke. It is broke not because there is no money, but because of what they are using, what they are paying as debt. And there'll be no solution to what the people are raising unless you open the debt books and ask, why are we spending 70% of our revenue to settle debt? Which debt is this? Can you open the debt register and understand what debt was taken, when was it taken, what was the sum applied to, and how comes this debt cannot pay for itself if it was legitimately taken? The reason why that debt register will never be open, I assure you, is because you'll find people in the Ruto regime went out into the international market after amending the PFM Act to illegally allow for spending of debt at source. Somebody goes to the US, takes a loan of 400 million Kenya shillings, and spends all that money in the US. Not even a coin enters our consolidated fund. Somebody will ask me, but we have control mechanisms that the control of budget, the Auditor General could have picked it. But what does the control of budget look at? The control of budget looks at money that has entered the consolidated fund. What does the Auditor General audit? Audits money that has been expended under the Appropriations Act from the consolidated fund. You are now told that this year alone, you are going to be paying 1.9 trillion Kenya shillings. And it's important to note down these figures. You are going to pay 1.9 trillion Kenya shillings in debt finance. Your collection is going to be approximately 2.4 trillion. Tell me, you are only left with 500 billion as a country. Tell me which economy is going to run here. 500 billion cannot pay all the government salaries. 500 billion will not meet the cost of government operations. 500 billion cannot be shared with all the counties. What ends up happening is they are going to go back to the market, again to borrow illegally, to meet their operations or to pay salaries. And yet in our laws, you are only allowed to borrow for development. So we need to understand why this appetite to increase taxes, why this appetite to increase taxes, levies, and charges by government. It's because they are not getting money from the exchequer for operations. There is not enough money in the exchequer accounts to pay for the salaries. So they must come back to the taxpayer and increase the tax that you're paying to them. They must come back and ask you to pay more for a service. If you're paying 100 shillings for an ID, now because the operations of the immigration department are hindered by this lack of money, they now ask you to pay 1,000 shillings for an ID. So you are going to witness every single day when a government comes out to speak to you, they will be telling you, we are raising your tax, we are raising your charge. That is a constant. Mbadi indeed confirmed this position yesterday when he was speaking, and he said, don't expect any relief until at the earliest 2034 because of the debt that we are paying. Don't you think the administration owes the people of Kenya an explanation of what is this debt that you are paying that says we cannot get a relief from the CS Treasury himself until at the earliest 2034? But I can assure you, based on our own analysis of the debt register and the illegal debts that were taken, these people borrowed 60 years ahead. So if things don't change, you will not get any relief until for the next 60 years. But the amount keeps increasing because they are borrowing illegally every day. Now, having said that, and to invite the congregation to consider this, removing William Ruto, as I've said, William Ruto is gone. It's not even our problem. Our problem is what is going to come next. What is the political system that we are going to have as a country? Because you may remove William Ruto, but Rutoism still remains. The system that has enabled this capture of the state continues. So you put a Willis Otieno there who doesn't understand what the problem is. Or you put Hillary, or you put Kalonzo, or you put Morara, or you put Omtata. It's the same. That the person is going to be confronted by the treasury mandarins that, look here, we need to pay this much. So the only option is for the country to continue, we must go and borrow illegally for us to stay afloat. Mbadi, who is the CS Treasury, before he became CS Treasury, was speaking this same language that I'm speaking. But today, he's the one telling you that wait 2034 at the earliest to get a relief. Why? Because he's now taking the script of the system. So where we are, if we need to make progress, all of us must agree that this system has to all go down. We must bring down the entire political system and start rebuilding our politics and our governance afresh. Our problem is not an accountability problem per se. It is largely what you call a debt problem. And that debt, according to us, is odious, it's illegal, it cannot be accounted for, and it is what is our present slavery. And what the young people, by raising the economic question, are doing is they are now doing what we call an economic revolution. And any revolution will always be against counterinsurgents. And the counterinsurgents, today their face is William Ruto, but it is more of what we call our traditional political system. All of them are against this conversation. Because you'll find they've been part of this conversation for the last 30 years. They've been part of the system. If you look at all the so-called leading political leaders in Kenya today, and you go back 30 years, all of them held a position somewhere in the last 30 years, either as a member of parliament, a senator, a governor, a CS. It's the same people. They've sat in parliament, they've sat in the cabinets that have approved these illegal borrowings, that are superintendent over the economic oppression and slavery of the people of Kenya. So what we are going through to do, we need to do, is to bring down that system, and there's nobody who has been part of this who is going to lead this revolution. And those who are going to offer themselves to lead, or those who are going to champion this cause, need to understand what you are up against. You are threatening 30 years lifestyles. People for the last 30 years have only lived off public lagis. Somebody has never bought even a bus stop for the last 30 years. Somebody has never gone to a petrol station to fuel his car because the oppression system supports him, sustains him. It is what keeps him afloat. So you are trying to take that away from him. You must expect them to respond. And their response will be to gang up. But therein lies an opportunity for the people of Kenya. Because we can continue the conversation and make it that the choices that we are going to have are those that stand for the people and for the political class. And that they are few. The people are more than them. So what you will witness very soon is they are going to try to turn this to a tribal conversation. The problem is the Luos, the problem is Kalenjins, the problem is Kikuyus, the problem is Somali. Then you all go back to your tribal cocoons. You start saying how the Kikuyu is a problem, the Luo is a problem, the Kalenjin is a problem, forgetting that when the system needs to sustain itself and raises taxes, charges, and levies, they don't raise it per tribe. It's raised to all Kenyans. That is being to pay is transferred to the people of Kenya, it is transferred to all Kenyans. There is no tribes that is told you are going to pay more or that you are exempt from paying this particular tax. But the politicians are the experts in tribal politics. You cannot beat them in that game. And if we get to that conversation, or if we don't have a strong comeback to the attempt to divide us into tribes, then I can assure you, wait for 60 years and there'll be no change in this country. No change, regardless of who you elect. Even if you elect Kalonzo, you elect Raila, you elect Omtata, as long as you don't bring down the entire system, there will be no change. Because you will have been taken down to your tribes and you'll be start seeing your fellow neighbor as a problem and not the political establishment that is superintending over your oppression. Now, when I talk about the economic liberation of the nation today, it is important that I say this. In any liberation, it cannot come to an end before it achieves its desired objective. The desired objective of our revolution is about economic liberation of the people. And maybe I should have said this before. Kenya has had so far two phases of revolutions and liberation movements. The first was the independence movement, which was all about self-rule and getting back the land. We want Africans, this is our country, we must lead ourselves. It was achieved in 1963. Then subsequent to that, remember again, the system that came into place inherited the colonial structures, which they maintained. And they're the ones who turned to become our oppressors. Hosting conversations like the one we are having became a problem. Political rights were still being limited. Kenya even became a one-party state. And gallant sons of this nation stood up. Ken Matiba, Charles Rubia, Raila Odinga, James Orengo, Martin Shikuku. They stood up against that system and they said, we want our political rights. You must allow us to exercise that political rights, to choose our president, to choose our leaders freely, to form political parties. We want the right to meet, the right to freely move. Having a passport was a big problem in this Victoria, a privilege to have a passport. So when they fought for those rights, they managed to put the system, and the system acceded to the revolution. I do believe that our quest for political liberation was segmented and concluded in 2010, August 27th, when we had the new constitution, the one we have today. Because now those rights to vote for our leaders, to freely speak, to belong to political parties, they were cemented. And Kenyans now are secure in terms of our political rights. But in any country, the most important revolution is always the economic revolution. So we are in that phase where Kenyans are saying, beyond just casting a vote, we are still oppressed. We are still not getting a lifeline. We are still feeling the weight of administration. We are not living a life of dignity. So the fight that the Gen Zs and other Kenyans have proposed is a fight to release them from the chains of oppression. Their oppressor are those who are superintending over the political establishment that is responsible for this economic malaise. So we are in the third and final liberation, which is normally the economic liberation of the nation. And if we do not define this question clearly to everybody, the politicians will define to us the contest to be tribe. And if we allow them to define it to be tribe, then we will have lost the perfect and golden opportunity to, at one go, liberate ourselves economically and change this nation into posterity. That it becomes a nation where you enjoy your political rights, but more importantly, you have economic freedom. You've gone to school, you have a skill set, you have a talent, you have money in your pockets because the economy is free. It is working to your benefit. So choice of a leader, choice of a contest must be limited to only those that are going to free the people economically. And there's so much I can say about our economic enslavement, but the time may not allow me in this particular instance. But just to say that I urge the congregation to be very careful and not to fall into any tribal conversation that will make us lose the ball on the question of what is the contest that the people of Kenya are proposing.